And welcome to the Scene Weekly podcast, where we harken back to our college debate days and pick two movies of the same theme to toe the line while Spikes clutch a hot Mondo track and hovering ever so closely to the white painted starting line. This week's episode is focused on best running movies, with McFarland USA rounding some laps against Without Limits. Come join Jonathan and Steven and Will Leer for another week of hopefully less plot chatter and copious more film banter. We are Scene Weekly, and welcome to our world, Mr. Leer.
Welcome. And I wanted to introduce our guest today. This is a long time coming. We've got a running podcast we're talking about, and we have an elite runner with us today, and Will Leer. Welcome to the pod.
Oh, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Ourselves not so elite. I mean, Will, basically, we were talking before this podcast on how far. I mean, I'm 355 and he's 56 for 1500, so we'd be buck 30, 140 back from you, basically. So not so elite, but there, we could pace you through your 3K PR, basically.
Maybe.
It's all relative, right? It's all relative.
Yeah.
It is.
That's a nice way of saying. Minds. Sure. But thank you for doing this. Really appreciate it, man. I mean, this is it's big for us, and I know that you've been through a lot of travels recently with going to Paris, but and travels again today. But appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to be here.
How was that experience like in Paris for you? Because I got to follow a little bit, and I saw some videos of you posting, and it seemed like a lot of fun from what I could tell.
Yeah, I'm notoriously not an online person. My wife is constantly trying to get me to try and become more of a husband influencer, if you will, and share some of, I get to go to some pretty cool places and pretty cool events with work. How was the experience? We could take 3 hours and talk about the Paris.
Yeah, I'm sure
if you guys wanted to, but boiled down to a couple of sentences, it's probably the best of any of the modern Olympiads. Yeah. I don't know how you have a bad Olympics with the backdrop of a city like Paris. It was stunning. The city turned out, and on a logistical level, which is always one of the big nightmares of the games, I think Paris knocked it out of the park.
Dude,
they did a great job.
I mean, the best games I can remember, like since being born, basically. I mean, it was incredible. Like every race on the track, especially, it was just like, there's no way this could be topped. And it's just like the next race comes, it's like, what the hell is going on? Like, this is wild. Like people like Rooks, especially in the 3K, I was just like, what? This is outrageous. Like, what is happening? This is outstanding. But I can't imagine being there and like with that environment.
It was equally outlandish being in the stadium. You're trying to, when you watch on the TV, I do feel it's almost like, we're talking about movies today. So it's like, it's almost like you're watching a cinematic experience. Like, is this real? And then you see it go down in front of your eyes. And it was truly, breathtaking, awe-inspiring, sweat-inducing. I don't know how many different times. I mean, it was And so that was a lot of my excuses, but a lot of it was just like, man, I'm just like, there's so much anxiety, so much excitement. I'm just like, I'm having a ball here, just sweating balls.
That's awesome.
I gotta. First of all, you have a childhood hero of mine, and like pretty much my favorite rapper of all time. And the fact that you were able to, in terms of being a husband influencer here, this is like your foray into it. No, I mean, you could literally be, So the fact that you were even in front of Snoop Dogg, being able to say, I don't want to try to repeat it, but Snoop Dogg, I, as a sixth grader, heard that song, Ain't Nothing But a G Thing. First of all, I thought the song was called This, That, and This and I wrote it down like literally because I recorded it from the radio. Hell,
we push record on the play on the tape deck. Yeah.
You put the tissue in the top basically so you can actually have it. But nonetheless, I can't imagine that moment. I mean, not to quantify for you, but how was that? Because to me, it's like I might have lost my shit.
Yeah. So when I was proposed the idea of doing this, talking heads show for the Olympic trials, it's been something that I've been an advocate of and trying to get some of the media outlets to pick up on, because for so often it's like, the foreplay, if you will, of a track meet is Paul Swangard or one of the other announcers, just giving you like hey, here's what we have coming up. And it's like a 15-second bit of like, rather than having, educated minds set the scene as you do for any major sporting event of like, here's what we get to see today. And then like build up all this excitement. And so when it was pitched to me that, we were going to have this show, I was like, oh, that's great. And like, do you want to do it? And I was like, I got a lot of irons in the fire at the trials already. This is,
yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm adequately, and then like, and Snoop Dogg's going to be a guest. I'm like, great.
Yes.
I'm in. Yeah, done.
Like,
say less. You should have led with that.
Dude.
You had me at hello.
Like,
you know, and
do you want to go to Paris? Maybe. Snoop Dogg. Yeah, I'm in. I'm there right now, actually.
Yeah. So just to clarify, I reposted a photo of myself. That was from Eugene, but Snoop was omnipresent in Paris. He was everywhere. He was doing less of like he'd get on NBC every now and again. But I mean, he must have been the most on-demand person, at least personality in
he was
Paris.
Like the ambassador. He was the ambassador of the Olympics. He just was everywhere in every moment. And yeah, it was awesome.
$500,000 a day. He was being paid by NBC to just I don't know if that's true or not.
It's not true. That okay. Yeah. But honestly, even at $500,000 a day, that's a deal. For them.
Oh, true.
That's a steal. I was like, that's pretty cheap. Like for Snoop and what he's doing.
Yeah. But also just like, he was just so excited. And the excitement from my experience of meeting him is genuine. He loves he loves Olympic sports. He's absolutely in love with the Olympics. He's so stoked on it coming to LA in 2028. And yeah, I mean, like, I'm excited to see what they do with him moving forward. My wife and I were talking about one of our in-stadium experiences, which I'm going to completely butcher the French DJ's name. I'm not even actually going to try, but some like super famous French DJ they had, like being the in-house DJ in the stadium, like dropping the tracks. And I was like, how sick would it be in LA 28? We have like DJ Khaled, right?
Oh,
and every US gold medal, it's another one.
Another one. Yes. You got to be pitching these ideas. This is great.
Dude, this is unbelievable. This is fantastic.
You guys heard it here first. So if you guys want to, if you know any super influential people, pass it that way.
Well, can you become a husband influencer? I guess first. I don't know any famous.
It's a work in progress.
You got 3 years or so to kind of build up to that before the next Olympics.
I like the concert though that they actually had as the presentation with Dre and Snoop as well on Long Beach. I think.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think they did a good job, sort of like, obviously, transcending a couple of different generations. Because like, it's funny. I was so stoked about meeting Snoop Dogg and getting to interview him, and just like even the opportunity to ask him a question on air, I was like, this is so sick. And I'm like, try like, a bit of out of body experience, which be cool. But I would talk to like some of the younger athletes that I know and work with. And I'm like, if you could ask Snoop Dogg one question, what would it be? Because I don't want to just have it focus on like my millennial generation. And they're like, a lot of Gen Z probably doesn't know who Snoop Dogg is. And I'm like, that is a shame. That is a shame. And I know to the three of us, it's heartbreaking. But I wanted like the closing ceremonies did a good job of obviously bringing the old with the new. And I mean,
God,
LA's going to have their work cut out for them, man. Paris went off.
Oh boy.
Paris was great.
Not only like the production of it, but just also the actual production, the execution, and the performances. I mean, it was just all. I can't imagine something better than this.
Yeah, I mean, a lot. So
really cool.
Even for our sort of like, I'll call them like the middle-aged Olympians. So like, if you have a 2 Olympic career, that's a good one. If you can span 3 Olympics, that's incredible.
Yeah.
For a lot of our Olympians, Gabby Thomas, Cole Hawker, Yard Naguse, Grant Fisher, their first games was in Tokyo with no people in the stands. And so then to show up to Paris and it'd be like, okay.
The world is watching.
Can we swear on this podcast, by the way?
Yeah, you can do anything you want, man.
Yeah, put the explicit thing next to it. Like, this is the fucking Olympics. Like, that was the Olympics. This is the fucking Olympics.
Yeah.
And it's like, it was just the excitement of the athletes, the excitement of the fans, 80,000 people every single session going nuts. That's what it should be. Yeah. I mean, like, thinking about the Coliseum just being jam-packed with people, it's like, gives me chills just to think about it.
Oh God. It reminds me of, we're both Manchester City fans, and we'll get into soccer here in a second. Probably, maybe, definitely. But we played Chelsea a few Champions Leagues ago in the finals, and we lost, but there were no fans there. And then we won 2 years later. We actually went to the finals in Istanbul this past year, or 2 years ago, I should say. And I can't imagine if we won our first, like, in a stadium that doesn't have any fans. Like, I would much prefer to actually be there and witness it. Not to say I'm taking away anything from Olympians in Tokyo, but like, that's got to suck. Not suck, but like, it's got to take a little or a large amount of excitement, if you will.
Yeah, I think the only thing that softens that blow is that everyone had that, right? It's not like, oh man, there was this like crazy thing that happened and they had to clear the stadium for that one night that you had your final. It's like, it was an entire year of performing in front of no people for track and field. So I don't want to say they were used to it by that point, but I think like, again, like what elevates performances from when we saw Jakob win that gold medal and what I think he ran like 328 or 329 in Tokyo, everyone was like, mind blown. Like, what did we just see? That was insane. And then it's like, oh no, well, you put 80,000 people in there and that becomes a 327 race. You know, it's yeah. It's just crazy.
Going out in 151. It's just wild. It's crazy.
Yeah. Chill. Just light work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Real relaxed.
And it's interesting with these Olympics. I was keen to like show my colleagues at work, like I had to turn on the 1500 meter race because they're not track nuts. They don't really know anything about, once every 4 years, you turn on the Olympics. But it's like, no, you need to watch this race. It's going to be epic. And I mean, for me, that was the race of the Olympics. There's a lot of great moments, but that was the race.
Yeah. Again, we could chop this up 100 different ways. We're 1500 meter guys, right? Like, so for us,
that's why for me,
and Americans. So when you have the top 3 Americans only having been cut apart by the previous world champion and the previous Olympic champion, it's like, that's pretty exciting,
It's exciting.
The present of 1500 meter running and Cole Hawker and Yard Naguse, and the future of 1500 meter running with Hobbs Kessler. They're just battling it with Josh Kerr and Jakob Ingebrigtsen. It's like, what a freaking story, right? And I loved hearing, like, the preamble for me for this Olympic Games was hearing on Sidious Mag when they got to interview the producer of Sprint, and like, great, we love sprinting. Of course, it's sort of like the easiest thing in track and field to sink your teeth into. But what about this Josh Kerr and Jakob Ingebrigtsen banter back and forth? And the guy's like, there's a lot going on in the middle distances right now. There's a lot of story that we could build around that. And I think after this Games, hopefully sprint resonated well. The second season is going to come out here in, I think, a month in September. They're going to cut it really quickly after the Games. And so it's like fresh on people's minds. And then hopefully over the course of the next, 18 months, 12 months, they do sink into like the middle and long distances and shine a light there, which I think, like, again, it's a little bit, it's less of the flash, the pizzazz, but more of like this, I don't know, operatic, epic, which is like a middle and long distance race.
Yeah. You have 4 minutes to play it out. Yeah. It's more of a movie, if you will. Yeah.
Speaking of movies. This is a movie podcast, but Will, what movies? What
your
genres
favorite
do you
movie?
like? What do you like? What's out there for you?
All right, so if I will be very transparent here, like my favorite kind of movie is like a 90-minute rom-com.
What's your favorite rom-com?
My wife and I go back and forth. I Love You Man is pretty top for us. And Forgetting Sarah Marshall, it's kind of the same cast of characters. Nice. It's vaguely the same movie, but no, those are absolutely 2 of our favorites. And like, you could of course throw like Love Actually. I throw Love Actually in more like a holiday category than a rom-com.
It is a holiday. The holiday as well. I would put that in a different category. It's a different feel,
Sure. And so it's really difficult. And I don't know if this is a personal problem, but to like get me to sit down for more than about 90 minutes. At the end of the night, I'm like sort of like a go kind of guy. And I can like sit down for 20, 30 minutes, like watch something that's uplifting, heartwarming. And then I'm like, I want to go to bed. Like I usually have like so many negative things that happen throughout the course of the day, or like, God forbid you pay attention to the news and listen to the radio. It's like, all right, I need something to take my mind off of like how eternally fucked we are. And then like,
rom-coms.
Yeah.
What about like Sleepless in Seattle, where Harry Met Sally?
Sure.
Are those past 90 minutes?
I time notwithstanding of those films, that are just like a little bit before my time of during that era. So was that like late 80s to early mid 90s? I was more of like a Happy Gilmore, Billy Madison kind of guy.
Ooh,
Got it. Yeah.
One of my all-time favorite movies is Mallrats. Usual Suspects is up there with like a top film that I could go back and rewatch 100 times. I often say Good Will Hunting, but I know that is controversial, namely because of Robin Williams' Southie accent. But
no,
is so good. But again, I'm a math nerd, so what are you going to do?
Okay, very cool.
That's a lot. I love that. First of all, rom-coms, huge fan. I don't know if Steven, if you're a big rom-com guy. I actually am, and I tend to watch Love Actually around the holidays, pretty much every year.
You got to. It's like that and Elf. Like, come on.
Yeah. So Steven, do you want to go into your movie? Backstop.
So first on the slate is McFarland USA. This is a 2015 movie directed by Nikki Caro. It's starring Kevin Costner, 129 minutes, so right under that 90-minute mark for you there. Budget's 17 million with a box of 45.7, and a Rotten Tomato score, a nice 80%. But it's a true story about a football coach, Jim White, who gets fired from his job for losing his temper and throwing a cleat at one of his players. He has to relocate to a small town in McFarland, California, which is predominantly Latino. He notices during PE practice that some of the kids have a talent for running and decides to form a cross-country team. Now, while coaching these kids, he learns that he can lead and learn from them more than he thought. So the cross-country team starts to excel and by long odds win their state championship meet. Coach Jim White, who didn't think he would stay in McFarland for very long, remains there to this day. It's a very uplifting story, and it's a true story, which is kind of cool. So, have you seen this film, Will?
Not only have I seen this film, I went to the red carpet of this film.
No way!
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's a little nugget I didn't know.
I got to
tell us.
Yeah. So I got to meet all the guys who are like the originators of the story, all the runners. I don't remember if Coach White was there, but I got to meet Kevin Costner. Met the actors that were. This was like something that was because the movie I think came out in about 2014, and I was living and training in Los Angeles at the time, sort of at the peak of my running career. Like I was one of the first Insta famous track and field runners. And so like I got this call from USA Track and Field. They're like, hey, do you want to go to this red carpet? I was like, absolutely.
Yeah.
But what will I wear? And so I remember like my wife and I, like we went shopping, we got all red carpet ready. And then like, I don't know why, but we sort of like expected like walk down the red carpet and people like ask us questions. And we just like walked down the red carpet and I had to ask a photographer to take a picture of us. Super embarrassing. But
what did you wear?
I had like a black velvet dinner jacket. I bought some tuxedo pants. I didn't want to go overboard, but it was also like in my era of having an awful beard. And so I like looked like a homeless man a skinny homeless man that they put in a suit. They're like, just walk down. But no, we we're sitting there eating popcorn, drinking sodas, rubbing elbows with the who's who of Hollywood. We thought, at least in our mind's eye, that's who we were sitting next to.
Right.
But getting to like yuck it up and chat, because the guys who were about whom the story was filmed, they were like super interested in the two of us as being like professional runners. What were we doing there? Wow. And then like Kevin Costner sort of overheard and turned around. I'm not going to be the guy that like taps my shoulder like, oh, Mr. Costner, can I? It was like, but he was like, oh, you guys are runners. Like, what did you think of the movie? And I was like,
That's how we feel, by the way.
Yeah. So, but like, this is going to be a long-winded answer of like what I feel about the movie. The story behind the film, fantastic. But I've long felt that Hollywood needs a running consultant, someone that can come in and teach actors how to run. Because all these guys, they look like 100%. Idiots. It's like,
oh my God.
It takes maybe 15 minutes a day for a week of like, some dribbles, A skips, B skips. And we'd have those guys, run some wickets. Like we'd have those guys looking pretty good out there rather than being like, oh man, come on. Like this is like, if you're trying to sell this as being a real story, these guys, they've never run in their lives, which I don't begrudge them. Running is like very hard.
No, 100%. Whatever. They're actors. Yeah.
But man, like, the biggest assault on running is anytime you see Nick Cage. I mean, that guy he's an abomination. And somehow in every film, he's like, he manages to kind of get a running scene. It's probably in his contract.
First of all, I there's two things I really despise in movies. And one of them is actually rain, which has been discussed ad nauseum on this podcast in particular. I don't know what it is. There needs to be a rain consultant, but a running consultant as well. I mean, it's outrageous. Like the fact that the main guy, I can't remember his name, but the main guy who is number one on the team is just, he doesn't look like a runner. He's not acting like a runner. He doesn't have a form of a runner. It's just, come on. Like,
he also looks like he's 30 years old.
They were. Yeah,
they're running.
It's Hollywood.
They're running up almond, like, I don't even know what they are, but like almond shavings or almond tarps. And I was like, is there nothing better in ideas of coming from Hollywood that you can run up a hill? I mean, there are no hills around, but a bridge, possibly,
Yeah, and there's got to be an overpass somewhere.
Or something. I mean, in Florida, that's what we would run up. That was our hill. You'd go and find an overpass, or you'd go find a bridge and run up that. But I couldn't agree more. We were talking to previous and watching both of these movies and saying, we need to just write a running movie. I don't know what that would be, but do you have any acting chops, by the way? Do you want to act in it?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Here's your Insta famous part 2.
Yeah. No, I always remember there was like this. I don't remember if it was like DieStat or Let's Run or one of those garbage platforms. But there was like, if you were ever gonna make Once a Runner into a movie, like it's been written, right? It's Once a Runner. And you're like, who would play Quentin Cassidy? And it was like, Will Leer. And I was like, that's like one of the nicest things. It's the only nice thing anyone's ever said about me on Let's Run. It's like,
that's awesome. Very nice.
Yeah.
That's very nice. That's I mean, for a Let's Run type comment, that's probably the nicest thing that you could pretty much get. By the way, hot topic here. I actually legitimately don't think Once a Runner is it's not a good book. Sorry to say.
No, it's not well written, but the story is great.
The story is great.
It's a great story, and I like the lines, and I've repeated the lines ad nauseum as well. But yeah, the story, that's it. Yeah,
no, it's a book that you should take down to the beach, read in about an hour and a half to 2 hours when you're getting nicely sunburned. And yeah, it's like you're just flipping through this thing, right? It's sort of like Boys in the Boat. It's like, what a great story.
Yeah,
great story. Yeah,
the writing. If I want good writing, I'll look elsewhere. But like for a good story, just not getting too hung up.
So you're our lead actor then.
I'm the lead actor.
Well, 15 years ago, maybe. I don't know. Like if you're trying to have someone in their prime, I need to get some hair dye. We can fix that. We'll fix it.
There is a second book that he wrote called The Road to Carthage, I believe, is where he's running a marathon. So you could play that part, the older
right. God, I've run a marathon. No, thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, this movie, it's interesting because it's set in high school cross country. We all ran high school cross country. And my question to you, Will, is how did you get into running?
Through a back door. I started running track and field because I could no longer handle the mental anguish of sucking at tennis. And I just watched Challengers, and I was like, man, I see a lot of myself in this racket smashing. But like my mom like stopped coming to my tennis matches. She's like, you're embarrassing.
Oh, wow.
Like this is awful. And I was like, writing's on the wall. I need to find something else. And my dad for years had like tried to push me towards running because, playing soccer growing up outside mid, and like even in high school, I'd run all game and I'd run through like 3 or 4 different players and that was great. Whatever. I didn't really think anything of it. This is what the position required, was a semblance of aerobic ability. And a bit of speed. So outside or midfield in soccer is where we draw a lot of our middle distance talent in the U.S. But yeah, it was one of those things where I was like, all right, first day of track practice. I remember like being in the gym. It's Minnesota, so it's cold as shit outside, and we're in this like tiny high school gym, like just doing like running form drills, and there was like, sprinters go over here, middle distance over here. And of course, my initial reaction is like, well, I'm just trying to stay fit for soccer. I'm going to the sprints. And like,
right.
If you think of like in a movie being grabbed by the nape of your neck, it's like the soccer captain grabs me. He's like, Leer, you're coming with us over here. And I'm like, damn it.
No.
All my friends are going over to the sprints and I'm doing like distance workouts. And, it's kind of one of those like stupid stories where the rest is history. Yeah.
Right.
Did you get recruited out of high school?
Not very strongly. I ran 153-ish, 415 for the 800 mile in high school, which at the time was decent. I got a couple of D1 looks, but I was more academically inclined. And so wanted to like make sure I had a full college experience and wanted to go to the best school I possibly could. And like, I also wanted to run. And so like, those were definite buckets that all needed to be filled. And that's sort of how I ended up at Pomona, but I was very, very close to entertaining an offer of going to Penn.
But
I'm a West Coast guy.
Steven, You got in backdoor as well. Soccer, was it?
Yeah, very similar story to Will. I grew up playing soccer my whole life. Outside mid, I was a left winger because I could use both feet. And yeah, it was like you said, just constant running, and you ran through people. And then yeah, I had a coach kind of noticed me, and he's like, "Hey, why don't you come try out for the cross country team?" And I'm like, "Well, I was going to do track because track's in the spring and cross country's in the fall, and soccer was in the fall. Like, how can I do both?" And he's like, "Oh, you can do both. You can do both." So I was like, "Okay, I'll try it out." And my first season, I got injured, of course, but I stuck with it. And then I gave up soccer, and like you said, the rest is history. Just kept running and found my way into a college, and not as fast as Will, but I got there.
It's all relative.
It's all relative.
It's all relative. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. So when Aisha and I first moved to Colorado, I got literally, again, one of my first runs, some guy was like, "Hey, you want to coach some high school kids?" I was like wearing a Team USA shirt. And I was like, sure. What is that?
Sure,
I don't know
why
what that
not?
means,
Yeah.
but like, yeah, here's my phone number. Give me a call. And this guy was relentless. I'm still very close friends with this family and their boys today. But it was one of those things where you're like, we'd be at track practice. I'd look over because soccer in Colorado is a spring sport, and I'd look over at the soccer field. I'm like, that kid's never going to make it in soccer, but God damn it, he'd be a good miler,
Yeah.
But in high school, very similar. I never officially ran cross country. I would go and run in their meets when I didn't have a conflict with soccer.
Oh wow!
So it was a real balance. And there was one time where I missed a soccer game to go run in a cross country meet, and that was when we had our state qualifiers, so like the region meet. And I was like, all right, I owe it to these guys on the team to like try and help them qualify for state. And we had some nothing game that day, but that was the only time that there was a conflict. And I loved cross country. Yeah, I gave up soccer when I went to college, and became full-time runner. And all the guys in the cross country team, like to this day, still the best friends.
Yeah, I didn't have soccer inclination, although I'm passionate about it now, but not for playing. I was told throughout my entire life, and I guess I'm just a very stubborn and idiotic person to some extent. From like 7th grade on, like I would win field day and stuff, like the 800 and things of that nature. But I was heavily into basketball, and I was like, I'm gonna be a basketball player. Gonna go like delusional to some extent. I'm going to get a scholarship, and then realized very quickly in high school that not only am I not going to have a scholarship in any way, shape, or form from anyone, I'm probably not even going to play on this like JV team. So once that like settled in, and it took years for this to settle in as a 4'11" 6th grader, I was like, oh, maybe they're correct on possibly going out to track and field. I ran a 5:16 mile after practice and suicides as a freshman. And like my coach was like, you need to stop playing basketball and you need to go to track. Like you need to just run track. But I eventually got there my senior year. It took a long time. But here I am still. So
yeah, we all need that person in our life that's like, you need to give that fairy tale up and focus on this thing that you can actually be good at. Like, when you look in the mirror, what do you see? Yeah. How delusional are you?
I was pretty delusional.
Yeah. No, that's right. So back to McFarland.
Yeah, back to McFarland. So it's interesting setting this with a football coach becoming a cross country coach, because I personally had that when I was in high school. I had a basketball coach as my cross country coach. I moved my senior year of high school from Indiana down to a small town in Georgia because of my dad's job. And the cross country program was just, it existed, but it was kind of an afterthought. And I go down there, and the coach is like, basically kind of like Jim White, run a lap. Okay, where's the workout? Like, what are we doing? I basically had to kind of like help teach the coach how to coach. But I thought that was interesting in McFarland USA that, you can take somebody from a completely different sport, but through coaching and through patience with players or runners or whatever like that, and find gyms in the rough and teach them and coach them. Did you ever have like that kind of experience with a coach, or a coach that really stands out to you when you were young?
I'm lucky. I'm really lucky. At least in regards to running, like all of my coaches throughout the entirety of my career, from when I started in high school I had 2 different coaches in high school, but and then 1 coach in college, and then I had 3 coaches professionally. I mean, these guys are all top class, absolute top class. But what this reminds me of is Frank Gagliano. Frank Gagliano is
Right.
a former football coach. He, coached at Rutgers, and then it's like, we need a track coach, or maybe this is when he was at Georgetown. I forget the how exactly it all played out, but it's like, this is one of these threads that's like, and I talk about this now with athletes all the time who are transitioning from sport to professional life. It's like, look, there are soft skills in this that are unteachable, and like the ability to be a good coach means that you have an ability to touch people and inspire people. And like, until the internet started, right, and like coaches started sharing training, it's like, that's what it was. It was like, can you convince 7 young men to go out there and do this thing that's really fucking hard, and then get them to show up on race day and go even harder, not for themselves, but for the others. And like, that's really, to me, what this movie like boiled down to was a story of a fantastic coach and a group of kids that like sort of Mr. Miyagi-ing wax on, wax off by nature of like the circumstances in which they were raised, trained them to being good runners. And we see this. What was the Chris McDougall book about the Mexican ultra runners? It's like,
Born to Run.
Yeah, Born to Run. There is this element of like in your genetics that is undeniable, and like these kids, whether they knew it or not, that kernel was in there and just had to sprout. But no, I mean, like throughout the entirety of my career, I've had unbelievable coaches, which I think is part of the reason that I was able to compete for as long as I did.
That's awesome.
You know what? I have to out myself to some extent. I passionately, in college as well as in high school, hated cross country. And I think it was primarily because of just waking up so early on all the time. It just seemed, especially though in college. I mean, we were up at 6 a.m. for whatever reason. Our coach in college, we had the same coach, just decided 6 a.m. or 5:30 was going to be the time that we woke up, and immediately would be having us doing like hill repeats. And he wasn't the nicest human being on earth, no offense, but still chat from time to time, old Don. And it's one of the things I don't have many regrets in my life, like in the total scheme of things, but I wish, and I do miss very deeply, the camaraderie we had, especially with you, Steven, and pretty much, the top 5-6 people that we ran frequently with. That camaraderie of cross country, that like, you're in this together, like grinding through just sickness and health and like hill repeats together. I actually legitimately miss it very deeply. And I wish I would have taken it not more seriously per se, because I did put effort in, of course, but like accepted what it was worth at the time. I just didn't understand how important it was to me, even though I didn't like it, or I said I didn't, but I actually truly did. I do miss it. I really, really, truly do. And I'm running in November, I'm actually running a 5K at VCP. So it's been years, like a decade, since I've run cross country.
Yeah, it's so cross country and track and field are I think we get sort of like lumped together, but it's the highest participated in sport in high school. So
is it
more kids run cross country and track than any other sport. I think football is second, because every football, if you have freshman, sophomore, or JV varsity, it's like you need 100 kids on every team. But there are more kids that participate in cross country and track. And one of the things I think is so special, and like you do see this a bit in McFarland, is like, there are no cuts. There is a varsity, and there are different teams, but everyone goes to practice at the same time. It's like, you don't go there and like, all right, get dispersed to your different fields. It's like, you're all running on the same track. You're all going to the same place. You're always going to the same almond hills, almond groves, and like, and doing those workouts. Right. And so like, as hard as it is, you have this communal suffering that draws bonds that last a lifetime.
That's the best way to put it. Communal suffering. And I really do miss it. I feel like I need to get a cross country team together now. I ran for NIAC for a number of years, but we only had one national event we would go to, and that was pretty much it. But I miss it. I actually truly do.
Steven, I miss it in theory.
You have other things throughout the day that you have a lot of irons. I mean, you're going to Paris, you're interviewing Snoop Dogg. Come on, brother.
I mean, again, it's like so many years as a pro to get through a hard fall of training, we'd say like, it didn't even matter when I was at the Oregon Track Club, like, all right, we're going to go run club cross country nationals. So like US Open cross country is like in February, that starts to conflict with the indoor track season, but club cross is always in like early middle of December. And we're like, all right, starting in September, we're going to grind and we're going to go we're going to go show all these punks who think that they're good. We're going to go to club cross and we're going to kick the shit out of everybody. And then like, ultimately we get to like a week away and we're like, nah, we don't want to go. Or like, you know, someone will get hurt or coach will be like, yeah, you guys aren't going. Like there's no upside to this for sending a professional group of runners to club cross country. Like the only thing that can happen is you get beat. Like if you win, you should have. But if you get beat, you know, it's going to be this whole story.
Like, what were you doing wrong? Yeah.
But it took like that. That was a great inspiration. It took all these guys that like, you used to run cross country, you know how, like when you're in the thick of it, when you're 5K into a 10K cross race, it's like, this is fun. When you're 6K in, this sucks.
This sucks just so bad.
Just get me over this thing. But it is, you know, we always used to say in college, you know, it hurts so good.
So good. Hurts a little bit more now. That I just got back into running about 2 months ago, like trying to be serious about it. I ran a 10K a couple weeks ago. I kind of know my limits now, but being close to 40, a little bit more recovery time is needed for me.
Yeah, 100%.
Very close. You're both very close to 40, right?
Getting there.
Knocking on the door.
Sorry.
I mean, you never ask a girl their age.
You never ask a guest their age. I'm 43, to be clear. So Steven turns what, November 25th? Something like that.
Yes, it's coming up. It's coming up this year. But the whole reason behind this this running pod, or the movie running podcast, is because next week Jonathan is doing a big race in Sweden, 1500, and you know it's coming up. You ready?
Ooh, I don't know about that. But I've. How do I present this? So Will, you and I talked. I don't know the exact date, but this is a guess here because I have other dates around the same time. But I do want to thank you off the bat. I mean, I should have probably done this from the very beginning. You changed my perspective in an instantaneous manner when we talked June 5th or June 6th, whatever it might have been. I have been running. I haven't taken a day off in 6 years. It's been a long time, but there was a ton of little things that added up to a significant portion that I realized only now after doing those little things and adding up to a significant portion that, you know, you certainly influenced me to change my ways, even though you probably weren't even intending to do so. But with that being said, I haven't had a drink. I haven't had a cheat meal. I haven't had pretty much anything. I had a gummy I put in my mouth for my daughter, and I eventually spit it out. Not saying that this is the best option here for you, but it was like my mentality just became fucking laser focused after the conversation. In addition to,
I'm so sorry. That was.
I know, right?
Yeah, you guys have been living an awful life since our conversation.
No, right. I became obsessed, and I really appreciate it. I have an obsessive personality on various things, but like it wasn't all in on running, and it should have been, to be honest with you. And I'm sure you've had this type of personality. But I saw this Will Smith quote where he was talking about the difference between good and great the next day after talking to you, and it was like these two combined factors, and I was like, yeah, I just got to go all in. So I bought a sauna. I do a sauna 4 days a week. I've been drinking beet juice. My diet is on par. I dropped 20 pounds. Like everything is seamless, I guess, at this point. Built a gym. I'm in my basement right now. Did everything you're supposed to do, if that makes sense. But so I want to thank you for that. It really was through, I don't know if it was your encouragement, whatever it might have been, it clicked. But with that being said, yes, we wanted to have you on the pod for this reason. But I'm running World Masters Champ, so it's basically it's for the elderly, the 40 plus groups of individuals who are still trying to hold on for whatever it's worth. And my wife, I guess she really puts it best, and she was just like, "Yeah, you got something still inside of you. You need to prove to yourself." And I was like, "Yeah." I never ran 352. I always had 352 in my head, and it just pissed me off, and it still pisses me off thinking about it and talking about it. But ultimately, it's a week away. A week from today are the semifinals, and yeah, I'm in, I think, fairly good relative shape. I would say pretty good shape for a 43-year-old. I ran 16:58 for 3 miler this morning. Went into 10 400s, 90 seconds rest, and 65. So not bad. We're there.
That's
Yeah.
good. Hey, you know what? We always used to say, like, you're as fit as you're going to be. Like, you can only screw it up between now and the race. You know?
That is the hay's in the barn.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the whole purpose of actually having this today. We've actually recorded a podcast in advance of this, but I wanted this to come out on the day that I was running, as if, you know, a few hundred people that watch this would appreciate the coincidence. But anyway, I thank you. You a few of the things you said challenged me to an extent that corrected my ways that I think needed to be corrected. I mean, just the seriousness for which you actually took running, I was like, wow, there is a huge difference between myself now and what a professional actually is. Hence, a professional. Yeah, thank you, man.
Yeah, you know, when you live and breathe it 24 hours a day and it's your job, it's a little bit different than managing a career and a family and having kids and a wife. It is, to those athletes out there that continue to compete at a high level and have those things, I'm astonished.
Roberta Groner, I don't know if you know her, but she is I don't remember her age, but she is a masters athlete who is still running like 27 flat, and I think she's 52, maybe 51, and I'm like, that is slick, super quick. Central Park Track Club athlete. But yeah, thank you for being on the pod. Not to go in like greatest of detail of backstory here, but how about we get on to Without Limits?
Yeah, let's move on. I don't take compliments very well, so
I hate you. Well, you suck. Thank you, though.
Yeah, honestly, that resonates so much more with me. Like, my wife and my daughter, if they ever were to meet you in a dark corner, like, run.
Run. Teach me, consultant. Yeah, so I wanted to have two different movies, but with Prefontaine. So I actually originally wanted Pre versus Without Limits. But with that being said, we got to choose Without Limits. So backstop, not to take up too much time here, but the scenario here is this: Without Limits, 117 minutes. Robert Towne, same guy who wrote Chinatown, by the way, which is outrageous. Had no idea he was involved in this and directed this. Wild. 1998 PG-13 drama, 79% on Rotten Tomatoes, with a $25 million budget, and boy did it do shitty in the box office with 780,000. My fucking god. Tom Cruise, by the way, who was going to play Pre in this movie, but decided that he was himself too old and he decided to produce it. There's a lot of, I don't know if you've read any of Kenny Moore's books, but he talks about this a lot, of like the antagonism between the two movies coming out, one before the other. And boy, is there should be a documentary that actually goes into the details of it. But Tom Cruise got involved with Without Limits, and then Kenny Moore was asked to be on both as a consultant for runners. I guess they didn't consult him on how to run, but we can get to that in a second. But interesting backstory there. But the backstory is this: before Steve Prefontaine, who's played by Billy Crudup, makes it to the 1972 Olympics in Munich, he is an unlikely track star at the University of Oregon. At school, and after Steve initially clashes with Coach Bill Bowerman over his style of front running the race at maximum speed from the beginning to end, he develops a strong bond with the man, to say the least. Steve also has a profound effect on a beautiful co-ed named Mary, interesting relationship I might add, who becomes the object of his affection. Do you remember watching this for the first time, Will?
For the first time? No. I had to have been in high school, but again, like, I got into running, like properly into running, very late. And it took my high school coach, like, oh my God, you haven't seen this movie? We're watching it at the next pasta party. Oh my God. And like, before I went to school, he gave me, why am I blanking on his name? Former American record holder, Steve Crams
UK.
Yeah, I know.
Steve. I don't know. What did he run? What was his event?
He ran the mile. He was Alan Webb broke his American record.
Nope,
not Holman.
No.
Tip of the tongue. This is super embarrassing.
You gotta edit this out.
He coached at. I know everything about him. He coached at UC San Marcos. All right. We're going to the
Steve
internet.
Scott?
Steve Scott, that's the guy.
Steve Scott. God. Oh, yes. Oh, and the most sub 4 miles ever.
Yeah. So he has a book called Miler, and it chronicles when he was training as a pro out in Upland, which is like one town over from where Pomona is.
Okay.
and it was just like, again, it's like I knew nothing about running, and so I'm like reading all the stuff about him going to the track, and it's 115 degrees, and coming home, and like before he does anything, he drinks a 6-pack of beer, and I'm like, that's my guy. But again, like this whole notion of like getting into the weeds of running and sort of like geeking out on it and living it and breathing it, I didn't really get there. I don't know that I ever got there ever in my career, but definitely, I mean, hands down between the two movies as movies, Prefontaine Without Limits, much better film.
Agreed.
No, I certainly agree. And I think only actually in the last 3 months, I've actually geeked out about running, probably ever, I guess, in comparison to what I was before. You know, I didn't drink in college. I was pretty focused, but like, to be honest with you, there are days, you know, if I ran like 40 days in a row and that's 6 miles a day, I'd call it like good. And that is good, but it's not great, or it's not even remotely close to being great. But I think it took me until now to even realize some of Pre's quotes, like, to give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. I mean, which is just that, you know, it's regurgitated left and right. I also have a poster, a big flag here. But I actually didn't legitimately understand that probably until very, very recently after our conversation. I know you don't like to be thanked, but fuck you again, Will. It's still to this day, I feel like even with people who don't even know who he is and get introduced to him, like, he's infectious. And without even being alive, he's still infectious, which is wild. I don't know another character like that. I mean, maybe if like Usain Bolt, not if he passed away, like he would have that type of charisma. But there's not a lot of people in the field of running that are like that. You know, a lot of people are the Kipchoge of, like, you know, not to say they're bland, but like they have a very even keel accounting type personality. There's a lot of grind that actually is involved in this sport. And to me, these two movies like set a fire initially to begin running, I think. What about you, Stephen?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Stephen, no, I want to hear what Stephen has to say.
Yeah, I mean, for
his namesake, after all.
Exactly. And the funny thing enough, I went by Steve for most of my younger life, even in college, and all my college friends still know me as Steve. But professional had to go Stephen. But yeah, this was a movie that again my coaches showed me. Loved it. I think I saw Prefontaine first, and then I saw Without Limits. But yeah, I mean, I had a pre poster on my wall through most of high school, college, with like every race that he ran and every time. And I think it's just the mentality that Steve Prefontaine brought to his life, like, you know, being a front runner, because it's not about, you know, just winning the race. It's how you win the race. And, you know, as a young kid, you have all of that energy too, and you want to, exploit those thoughts into your running as well. And I certainly did that, and I learned the hard way that you can't just run hard the entire time and try and win. Sometimes it's better to sit back. But yeah, love these movies.
All right. I have a different take on them. Okay. I love them for their inspirational qualities. I love them. And I love the story of Steve Prefontaine for how it has resonated with that high school athlete, with that sort of like, I'm a bit of an outcast. I don't really know where I fit in, but I have this thing that I can do that I'm pretty good at. And like, this guy got really famous because of it. Here's where it takes a turn for me. Hot take, I think if Steve Prefontaine doesn't die in what was everyone in Eugene knows was a drinking and driving accident, he is not as popular as he is now, because
I would agree.
The person that everyone knew was like kind of a jackass, like kind of but the beauty of movies and cinema is you can just like, you can focus on the good stuff, and there is so much good behind the story that like and again, it's incredibly tragic no matter what the circumstances are when someone passes at an early age. But like, because of that early passing, it's like all of his friends and family and these people around him, they just want to remember the good stuff. And like, without a doubt, he had an infectious personality. He's a little bit of that Jakob Ingebrigtsen. Like, I'm going to say these things and I'm going to back them up. And like, because if Jakob Ingebrigtsen said these things, then started to lose all of his races, you'd be like, this guy sucks.
Means
What a
nothing.
prick.
Yeah.
What a prick. Yeah. Well, just like, what a prick. If you're second place all the time and you're talking like this, if Noah Lyles starts losing all of his races, you're like, dude, no one gives a shit. You're just an asshole.
They're going to shoo you away.
They shoot you away. But like he was a part of it was timing, right? In the early 1970s, running boom in the States. He's riding this wave of people being like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm moving my feet on the ground pretty quickly. And like, and like, oh, this guy's doing it pretty well. And like and we just went through an Olympics, right? And we saw 1972 Munich Games, like it's sort of us versus the Germans and like all this stuff. And it gets like, there's so much emotion tied up into this time. And again, I think this is why like Noah Lyles, Sha'Carri, they're going to become household names because we just went through this incredibly global, tragic, traumatic experience with COVID. This is the first Olympics, and we have Americans out there winning, and like we have the next Olympics in LA. And so like there's all this sort of circumstantial stuff that went around the story of Prefontaine, which sort of catapulted it into the stratosphere of popularity.
Sure.
And
that's a great way to put it, though. That's an excellent
like,
way to put it.
It was pretty good. But then like there's things where I'm like, fuck, I'm faster than Pre. And so like that's true. And I don't think I was that good. You know, it's like, you know, relative to where running is now, it's like the guy, he's not even qualified. You know, maybe he would qualify for the trials, but he's not making the final. And he's like definitely not making the team. So I think there's a lot of it. And like, if you don't look at it too much in historical context, you don't focus on the times, you just focus on the man's effect that he had on the sport, on the country, on like what it meant to be a runner, profoundly effective.
I don't know the entire history or have talked to people that used to know him or his family or anything like that. I haven't looked into him deeply. But with that being said, I could just extrapolate to how his personality is, because I think we've all met front runners, and especially so that we're outwardly saying these outlandish things. Because I mean, when it comes down to it, I'm talking to my wife and we're watching this together. It's our first time watching Without Limits, right? And she just cannot even comprehend this fucking idiot who is running outside of what his coach wants to do. And that's not even like necessarily the bad part, but the bad part is just like, he's just going to continue like a moron, like a low IQ individual who's just going to continue front running, and literally has evidence from Bowerman, who's like a genius, to suggest that what he's doing is literally moronic. And he's just like, no, coach, I'm going to do it. So now extrapolate that to his personal life and how he would probably act to everyone around him. I would imagine he's not the nicest of human beings. And
well, you got to be on the inside, right? Like for those type of people, if you're in the inner circle, then like we always had this saying about Nick Simmons, that like Nick Simmons is an asshole, but he's our asshole. Like he is unabashedly and unapologetically the way that he is, and that's what made him incredibly talented. But like when you can be so laser focused and like, no, this is like, I have unwavering belief that this is what makes me successful. I tried it once the other way and it did not work, and I'm not willing to go. We race so sparingly in track and field, especially distance running, that like, I'm not going to try it another way. I know I can do it this way. I know this is like what makes me good. And so like, if I'm Jakob, why would I let a race pan out like a 2016 final? Like, I know that I'm not going to win a sprint over the final 400 meters. So I'm going to make it hard from the gun. This is how I'm going to do it. And he hasn't yet won that world championship. He only has won one Olympics, but like, it's what he believes that he has to do, no matter what evidence is to the contrary, right?
How do you think Jakob like ran that race? What would you do differently if you were him?
He even said he went out too fast.
54 on the first lap is probably a bit quick, but so I have an opinion that I should probably regurgitate the opinions of the people who are still relevant in the sport, but I won't. I'll say my own opinion. I think he should have gone out faster.
Really?
I think if he goes out in 1:49, that you make people question deep personal belief.
Oh, right.
And we can see him be so strong that he can win the world championships in the 5K. He's incredibly talented over 5,000 meters, but he needs to make the 1500 a 1501 meter race. Like when you make it anything less than, then you've brought other people into the fray.
Wow. That's a genius thought, actually. I had never
But
even
there's
considered
there's
that.
a scene in Without Limits, right, where he's like, he's like, how am I going to break this guy? I'm going to break George Young. How am I going to break him? It's like, well, you're going to subtly increase the pace of the race so that these guys don't know the fact that they just ran their penultimate lap in 54 and not their final lap. So it's like, someone did say to me, like, well, if he goes 57 on the first lap and then 55 and then 54, you get to 1200 in the same way, but you haven't exhausted a lot of these, we can get into the science of it, but like these fast twitch energy stores and like you give yourself an ability to be able to fight off a late charge from someone like a Cole Hawker, which I don't know, Cole Hawker gets beat on that day to begin with.
Dude, no way.
When you can kick with 120 to go and then gets basically fully stopped and then kick again at a 327 pace, it's like he had a 325 in his legs. I mean, come on. So
have you ever seen that? And not to segue into something else, but like I've never seen that in my life.
I've seen a lot of running in slow races. I haven't seen it.
I've never seen in a 327. I've never seen it ever.
Well, there's only a few instances in history where 327.
Yeah, sure.
We're usually like rapid affairs in Monaco or Rome or something.
Say sub 330. I mean, it's just like I've never seen that actually happen.
Yeah, like usually when at that point, you're physically stretched so far that if you lose momentum, like that's it. That's it. You're done.
That's it. What a kick!
Yeah,
unreal.
No, back to the film, and then I want to get into our own Steve Prefontaine, Stephen Prefontaine.
Thank you.
That I think of running movies, what has made this film last and still resonate is like we have the great coaching figure, we have this kid who thinks that they know best, but then when you marry those two, it's just like the sky is the limit, right?
Yeah.
But I think that the red thread again through these two movies, Coach White, Coach Bowerman, is like, all right, I see this thing before me that may not be changing. How these kids live their life at home in McFarland, California, like that I can't change that. Like how they get to school, what they have to do on the weekends, how hard their life is. I can't change that. But how can I package cross country in such a way that they like maybe can give a little bit extra or dial back something to give a little bit extra on race day? It's like Coach Bowerman. He's like, he's John Wooden. It's Ted Lasso, right? It's like Ted Lasso is an amalgamation of all these great coaching ideologies. And it's like, all right, I have this person who's not necessarily going to change who they are. What do I need to do in training every day to make them strong enough so they can't be beaten? And then get the respect of that person to say like, all right, when they come to you and they say, like, what's it going to take to win this race? Sure, you can run it from the front, but you just need to do it a little bit differently. Like, don't stop running from the front, but just change ever so slightly how you do it. Don't fundamentally change your belief in what makes you successful, but just alter it, change it ever so slightly that like, meet me, not even halfway, meet me 91%, just meet me 1%. And I mean, that's
what a good coach does. A good coach tries to find that happy medium to utilize somebody's talents, but make them fit in the way that will be successful in whatever they're doing. I really like how you said that through line through both of these films with these coaches, and especially like with those kids working in the fields. And like, I think cross country was also an escape for them, and it was for them to able to utilize their talents, but also to put that that hardworking lifestyle away and be able to gravitate towards cross country and have that kind of team atmosphere. So I really like what you said about that.
Yeah, and like, look, I think that's probably not too dissimilar from what experienced in Coos Bay, like blue collar fishing town, coastal Oregon. Like, if anything, like maybe they had a basketball or a football program, right? And Oregon not necessarily known for basketball as much as football as much as basketball. Football now with the Ducks, but like when you're coming from that small community, what can you do as a single entity to stand out, to escape? What's your path out? And like the path out for Pre was running, and like you get this little bit of like, oh man, I did this thing, someone paid attention. Now more people are coming to the meet. Now more people are coming to watch this. Now, and it's like, okay, this is my path out of this thing that might not be so great. Or at the very least, a reprieve from
it's a release.
Yeah, it's a release. Yeah.
At minimum. Well, Stephen.
Sorry, I was just saying one more thing that about Without Limits that I truly did appreciate, appreciate is the plight between the amateur athlete and the
for sure.
USATF, USOPC. I mean, whatever it was, the USAA or what that's the car insurance people, AAU.
Yeah.
Like that constant battle, it's like that persists today on the professional level of like, we have the IOC that's like, and USOPC that rakes in huge amounts of money from NBC and sponsorship. And like, where does that money trickle down to the athletes and like people getting rich on the back of Olympic sport athletes and all this stuff? Like, I think that's a really interesting thing because, these things are all cyclical and they're 4-year cyclical of athletes being like, wow, this is such a grandiose affair. And there's so much money being poured into this. And then I win an Olympic gold medal and I get no money. And like,
it's crazy.
It's wild.
Or somebody is taking their
love
share.
of country. Yeah. Right. And so it's like, there's a lot of those things in the movie that I think like, again, in under 90 minutes, they touch on a lot that like, as you get more granular into the sport of track and field, you're like, why would they choose to even focus on like, what does that add to the story of Steve Prefontaine, except for like continues to grow the size, the chip on his shoulder, which is like, I'm doing this thing at an incredibly high level. I'm inspiring hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. And I'm dirt poor.
I have to bartend.
Yeah. I have to bartend.
I can't imagine, man. I mean,
every time I'm in Eugene, I go to the bar that he bartended at.
Do you really?
Yeah. It's still open.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. I've actually never been to Eugene or Hayward, which is shocking, but never.
Yeah. You've run on the track. Right, Will?
I used to train at Hayward. Yeah. So
oh, wow.
I mean, old Hayward still, I mean, like, gosh, that runs in my blood. But new Hayward is, I mean, yeah, it's an extraordinary place to watch and compete in track and field.
I bet.
So why don't we get to our ratings, and then after this, I think we have the top 5. I don't know if you put together your top 5 people to run with. Did you? Possibly? Maybe? Definitely?
Were we doing top 5 people to run with or top 5 running songs?
Oh, we can do both.
I can do either. Okay. I can do top 5 people to run with. Yeah. That's honestly. We can play off each other on that one. All right. So what's our rating scale here?
So our ratings basically are justified by a variety of things, and it's like we have performance, we have quotes, but it's 0 to 100. If you want us to go first, so you can get a lay of the land, or if you want to give us
school me.
Yeah, Steven, why don't you go through the actual scores themselves and give your breakdown?
Yeah. So for McFarland USA, it's a fun movie. It's an inspiring movie, but I wouldn't say it's the best movie technically and writing and running as well, all things considered. But my overall score for this movie is a 75.55 out of 100. So right in the kind of the C category.
That's actually hilarious. We are almost like to a T the same. So McFarland, for pretty much those exact reasons, though, I mean, the lack of running ability, and it's not even that, it's the consulting, I guess, side or the rain that I'm taking issue with, and running up almonds, and maybe they did that. Anyway, the performance was lackluster, and I'm at 75.4, so just barely
just a tick lower.
Which, as background, that's probably 5 ticks less than the average, or 10 ticks less than the average. So it's 84, 85 is probably the average that we rate.
Got it. All right. So because I got invited to the red carpet, because I got to meet Kevin Costner, because I got to meet all the guys in the movie. Also, backstory, I was going to, with Nick DeFelice's brother, Nate DeFelice, we were going to spring break up in Sequoia National Park. And on our way up there, doesn't say anything. This huge Sports Illustrated piece had just come out. Again, he got Sports Illustrated in college. I did not. About McFarland had come up, and he handed it to me when we were driving, and I'm flipping through it. And I'm, oh, cool. And then gets off the highway. I think we're going to stop and get gas. And we go drive to McFarland High School, where they have it's, on the gymnasium outside of the track, the football track facility. It's like McFarland High School, home of state champion, cross country. And it's as big as you can possibly paint it on the side of this gymnasium. And I was like, I don't actually, he hadn't given me this Sports Illustrated yet. He's like, we pull up he was a senior when I was a freshman. So, and we've like, again, maintained this great friendship throughout the years that like, he's like, yeah, I just read this article, unbelievably inspiring. Here's the piece, read it as we like, continue on this drive towards Sequoia. But like, that was my first intro to what the story of McFarland was. So a lot of backstory here about this. And, I'm going to give it, I'm going to give it a 91. I'm going to give it an A minus. Yeah.
I mean, if I met Kevin Costner at the premiere of this movie, yes, I would do
Been
the same.
to the school, you've met the actual characters with the film is based on. So I mean, like, how are you gonna?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think of this movie as less of a movie about running than a movie about just like a heartwarming sports movie. It's like Cool Runnings isn't about bobsled, right?
Yeah.
It's about perseverance. It's about all those great lessons that we learn through sport. It's about camaraderie. It's about old curmudgeon-y white men changing their point of view on something, which I think we need a lot more of in this day and age, and seeing more value in migrant work communities than just people that are out there, picking fruits and vegetables. And so I think like, look, it's a challenging movie. It's a challenging story to tell. It's a challenge. And like only by the mighty might of Disney, I think, do movies like this get made. And so, I'm an optimist.
There we go. Look at that. The positive side of life. I'll go for Without Limits. I like the quotes. Other than that, I would say it's a below average movie overall. Like I haven't seen Without Limits in a very long time. For running, I actually think it's probably the best running movie of all time. But with that said, it's not the best movie of all time, 80.45. But it is better than McFarlane in my view. So there we are.
Yeah, I thought the screenplay was really, really good and Without Limits. I thought Billy Crudup's performance, like he actually did a lot of research in studying Prefontaine and the way that he runs and like how he crosses the finish line. You can see that. You can see that he put in the effort and the work. I really like Donald Sutherland as Bowerman. I think his performance was subtle but powerful, and the relationship between the two was really good. I like this movie. I'm giving it an 82.05.
Again, I'm going to blow you guys out of the water on this one. Yeah, Without Limits is, I mean, hands down, best running movie. Running Brave with Billy Mills, I think, is also
excellent,
very high up there. But of the modern era running films, movies about which I don't know why there aren't more running movies. I mean, like there should be some more coming out. But I'm going to give it a 95. I think like if Without Limits was on TV, so like my score in movies is usually based on like if I'm scrolling through death scrolling, would I stop and watch this movie? If Without Limits is on TV, I'll probably even stick through a couple commercial breaks,
wow.
and I will watch the movie. My least favorite part of the movie, in which it doesn't get a 97, is I don't think that like the story of the romance with Mary Marks like adds anything.
No,
it's like it has to be there, right? But like also I'm like,
does it? It's repeated throughout as well, so it's almost like downtrodden on how they're actually trying to present it. Like he's a creep almost to some. I mean, he is a creep. Like in the movie, it like literally is a creep. But it was not needed. Yeah,
yeah.
Sure.
I mean, at least like you could say creep. Some say persistent. Some say pursuant.
Sure.
But yeah. In today's lingo, he's definitely a bit creepy. Didn't get no. Yeah. No means no, dude. But no, I think like again, for all the things that you guys have said, I'm just like my general. If it's a running movie for me, it like starts at an 85. So
got it. Okay,
it's like it only goes up from there. Like when everyone wants to make anything about running, like how can I crowdfund this movie? But I think like I was rewatching some of the scenes over and over, and I do think that Billy Crudup's dedication to trying matching some of the runs. Although like when you go back and watch, I think it was the 3 mile or the 5K when Frank Shorter and Prefontaine are racing at like they're trying to raise money to keep Hayward Field standing, which again, it's one of these things where like, how do you not love this guy? He's like, he is the running superstar, and he goes out and runs this charity event to like raise money for Hayward Field. But like from lap 1, like, oh, it's so windy out there, and they're hauling ass,
Yeah.
they're like an all-out sprint. I'm like, Frank Shore's a marathoner. Like, what the hell are you doing coming out running a 5K? Like, this is the type of stuff where like my brain, like I just get a little bit too analytical about it.
Yeah.
But I do think in broad strokes, in terms of like painting a picture of what running was, what it takes to be a good runner, the struggles, and even in today's world of professional running, how hard it is to make it. I think this movie does a great job. And so, yeah, 95.
Cool. I mean, Billy Crudup, if you actually look at the pictures in some of this, like the stills of Pre, like him crossing the line, for example, in the tape, like it's almost to a T. Like if you do a side by side, he's fantastic. So his performance, excellent. But,
Yeah.
I would stop and watch Without Limits as well, for sure. And I think, a couple commercials probably.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I get to a point where I'm like, where's my rom-com?
Yeah.
Where's my rom-com?
Yeah.
Korean Mary just doesn't cut it.
Yeah. And then I remember this guy dies and I'm like, no, I don't want to, I'm going to stop before the sad part.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, full disclosure, I didn't go back and watch from start to finish for the pod, but I did go back on YouTube and watch all like the important scene. I mean, like I've probably seen the movie 20 times, 30 times. So like, I just needed a bit of a refresher. And then I went back and watched the Bill Sutherland eulogy, and I'm just like,
oof.
Like, oh my God. Yeah. Just hard. I mean, like I'm sitting there watching it yesterday morning and it's like, I'm jet lagged as I'll get out coming back from Paris. It's 4:45 a.m. and I'm just sitting in front of my computer, just like tearing up. It's like,
it's so good.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I'm exhausted. So very emotionally fragile, but also very, very, very good.
And the countdown. Oh my God. The countdown and him just talking about Pre and how they changed each other. Oh my God. It was just, it really is touching. My favorite part of the entire movie, actually. It's a tearjerker. Yeah. So how about this? Top 5 people. I'm sorry to flip this on you, but top 5 people to run with. We can also do songs after this, but why don't we start with top 5 people to run with, Steven? Who do you got at number 5?
Yeah, so I did a little. This is living or dead, by the way. So you
should clarify there.
But we didn't do any like fictional people. So real people that lived. And I put next to it in parentheses how far I think the run would be based on their fitness level. So my number 5, I kind of regret this number 5 pick already, but I wrote it down and it's there. David Goggins. We're doing about 200 miles, and I regret it, and he's going to break me. So
yeah, that's a regret. Yeah, he's going to make you weep for days. That's a good pick. It's strangely enough that I actually didn't pick him. I don't know how to say his name, but Fidipides, the first man to run the marathon. And I want to know why. Like, what were you doing? Where were you running away from? Like, what's the story, brother? Like, and why did you collapse? I want to know his history.
You might have to learn Greek.
That's true. It's Greek to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
But Fidipides. That's my number 5.
That'd be an interesting one. I think number 5 for me is Pre.
There we go. Look at us.
I think I'd like to go. Do you remember the scene where Bill Bauer, again, this could be completely fictional, but I want to believe that it's true, where he like hands him the first pair of waffle trainers and he like puts them on. He's like, let me just go take these and then he goes for a 10-mile run. Like, I want to do that run with Pre, and I want to talk to him about the experience.
100%.
That's a good move. Good choice.
So I got 10 miles. I got 10 miles with Pre.
There you go.
Nice.
My number 4, kind of keeping it light, keeping it comedy here. This is probably my favorite stand-up comedian, Mitch Hedberg.
Oh,
he would just joke the whole time, find different things. Like, I used to run, I still do, but I used to
too.
God,
damn it.
We'd probably be going about 2 miles. That's about it.
God damn it. I am so jealous of your pick. I need to change all of them. That would be my number 1, actually. Mitch Hedberg, I love you. Well, he's no longer alive. But number 4, FloJo. I mean, 98, she's been long for a while now. She's been gone for a long time now, but I want to talk to her. I want to see what she was dealing with and her own demons, but also just how the hell she got so fast. Unbelievable.
I'll put in my number 4 spot. I'll keep the comedian thread going. And I was sort of teeter-tottering here. My favorite comedian is Dave Chappelle, but the guy rips cigarettes so hard that I don't think we're not going for much of a run. So I'm going to swap in one of our other favorite stand-up comedians, Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart does love to run. And a couple years ago, I don't know if this was, I think it's one of these things where like the celebrity and the brand just sort of like they met in this place, but like what he was doing with Nike a few years ago was truly fantastic. And the guy just like he's an all or nothing kind of guy. So basically, how you've been living your life the last since June 6th, like that's kind of how he went into running. Was like, all right, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it. I want to find out what this thing is all about. But yeah, I think Kevin Hart, he's just sort of one of those like magnanimous celebrity figures that sort of can do it all, and would love to sort of I think Kevin Hart and I, we're going 10K, 10 miles,
10K,
10K with Kevin Hart.
There's you spoke about like the 70s boom in running. I feel like there's kind of like this swell in running again, just with like Diplo's doing a run club. The drummer from Blink
Travis
Barker, he's doing runs and stuff like that. And like, I mean, you're on Instagram and you're kind of, I don't know if it's the algorithm or whatever like that, but like just all these kind of just running influencers and things like that. It's just like this big swell that's coming up, which I love.
Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura had a 5K where Jelly Roll came out actually as well with Travis Barker. He was actually there, but Kevin was like the originator of it with Nike. He would have those runs like randomly, like on his Instagram, and say like, "Hey, anyone want to get together? Let's do it." Pretty cool though. Good choice.
Number 3 for me, I like talking movies. That's why we have a movie podcast. And I want to talk with one of my favorites. So I'm going Quentin Tarantino. We wouldn't get that far though.
No.
But probably a 5K, I'm going to say. But I would love to pick his brain about, his films, his writing style, some of his other favorite films, things like that.
Good choice. Number 3, similar to your David Goggins, but Cameron Hanes. Big fan. I like the fact that he's an ultra marathoner, even though he doesn't consider himself one, but he considered himself a bow hunter. But I'd just love to pick his brain on life generally.
My number 3 is Bob Marley. So we sort of like sports,
that'd be
cinema, music. And also there's a scene in the movie is comedy. Largely not worth a watch, but One Love. Where there's a scene of him sort of like, one of the things I think is really interesting about the story of Bob Marley is his dedication to like physical well-being. Like the guy, of course, smoked a lot of weed, whatever, but that's part of like the Rastafarian culture. But also part of Rastafarian culture is like your body is this temple. And like, so whether he's out playing soccer in the park or taking his whole crew on a run with him through the streets of Kingston, like just exploring what life was like for someone like in his era, being a obviously worldwide musical celebrity in Jamaica at the time when they're going through all this like political upheaval. But yeah, I think Bob Marley, and also my wife is Jamaican, so I've married into it.
Good choice. That's awesome.
My number 2, I'm kind of tagging along with you here, Will. I'm picking Pre. I would be joining you on that run in the new shoes. We'd be going through the Oregon trails. Sounds like it'd be a blast.
I'm left alone. My number 2, Sergio Aguero. It's got to be number 2. I mean, my number 1, of course, is my number 1, but Aguero, of course. He's a Man City striker. I don't know if you know him, Will, but he is a legend to Manchester City supporters and put us on the map in 2012 in old May. But Sergio Aguero, for sure.
Number 2 for me, again, I don't know how far we're going to make it in this run, but Barack Obama. We're going to do, so I high-fived Barack. In 2008, when he was running for president, he was doing an event at the University of Oregon in Mac Court, where we first saw Pre-Meet Mary Marks. But he was doing an event there, and there was a meet going on at Hayward. And so he like came down, and he and Vin Lanana like jogged a lap of Hayward Field. I watched him jump a hurdle. And I was first of all, we're all obviously like, Barack Obama fans, or everyone was 2008. But like, I was like, this guy's an athlete, and there's something different about him athletically. Like, again, someone who, in terms of political figures, we don't often see that many who are like strapping, fit people. And so Barack Obama, and I think that we're going to do 4 laps of the Occidental College track. We're going to do a mile at Oxy.
Look at you. Got specifics here. I like it.
I love that. Number one for me. I kind of thought about this list of doing a long run with somebody is like kind of like who would you want to share a beer with, who would you want to sit down and have coffee with, and Barack Obama actually sat down with this person at number one and had a great conversation, a great meal, and that's Anthony Bourdain.
Ooh, yeah,
writer, cook, chef. Just I'd love to pick his brain about life. We wouldn't be going very far. He did quit smoking near the end of his life, but I'd say about 2.5 miles is how far we'd get.
That's a good move. That's one
I'd say
you would...
his jiu-jitsu fitness could get him into 2.5 miles for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, he was actually pretty solid. I'm wearing some BJJ stuff as well, but I want to steal that one too. Bourdain is a fantastic human. Troubled, but man, that's a good one. I'm jealous again. But my number one is still my number one. It's Hunter S. Thompson. I mean, I don't know how far we'd go. We'd probably get like a squirrel and be distracted along the way. But I mean, in terms of my favorite writer of all time, he's on my arm. Big fan, slightly. So it would be Hunter S. Thompson for sure. I just want to know what... I mean, I would just like to have a beer with him, and then that beer would probably turn into lots of other things. I'd probably just do anything he says. You want to go take acid and drive to Mexico? Like, sure, why not? Let's do it right now. Like,
I have a better idea. Let's run there. Let's run there.
Let's do it. But yeah, that's our top five. So our top five basically is a clip that we...
Wait, we still need a number one from Will, right?
Sorry.
I was honestly hoping you guys both, those are two great number ones. My number one gets cheesy. And it's my wife. She's my favorite person in the world to be. I don't have to guess who my favorite person in the world to be around is.
Yeah.
But
awesome.
We do these things from time to time where we call family runs, where like the two of us and our dog will go out and we just like, I don't know, jog somewhere between 4 and 6 miles. And we're so very fortunate to live in Colorado, and like we find these incredibly beautiful places to go. And it's just, I know it's my favorite thing in the world to do. So that it's just an easy number one.
God,
that's
fantastic,
awesome.
Man. What kind of dog do you have?
A brown dog.
brown dog.
Yeah, he's a mutt. We rescued him from the Boulder Humane Society, but my wife, she says he looks expensive. Yeah.
That's awesome.
By the way, I'm in my family's from Windsor, or live in Windsor currently. They were in Fort Collins since 2003. But I'll be out there frequently. So if you're around for a 4 to 6 miler with your brown dog, I'll hit you up.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I know you don't like compliments, but I just have to thank you again, and I'll keep it as simple as that. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. It was excellent.
Oh, thank you guys. This is fun. Talking about running is one of my most favorite things to talk about.
There we go. Perfect. Well, Jonathan, you got a big run coming up. This episode's going to drop on race day, right?
That's right. It's 6 a.m. Eastern time is when I'm running. So Swedish time, it's 12.
All right. Well, best of luck in your race, John.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
See you guys.
See you guys.